I think. Oh, I was mute.
I think
No, no way. You were saying that I was mute, right? Okay, no way, no problem. Let's start again. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon with us, sharing this third session of Tetuan Valley Startup School, the 21st edition. I was mute. This is the best quote in 2020 and 2021. So just please forgive me. I'm Sergio. I'm program manager at Teton Valley. I will be the person in charge of the program and in contact with the teams. So if you have any doubt or question, just please do not hesitate to contact me anytime. This is my email, and just feel free to reach me. And yeah, we take this opportunity to reintroduce the teams participating in this program. The teams that were selected during the process are Upgrowth, Dexba, Lazaro, Jack, Brickfy, Recommend App, Umara, To Talk, Blue Bamboo, Embat, Festo, and We Woman. These teams will be with us today, pitching and receiving feedback in the second part of the session. And yeah, we start this third session of the program after talking about lean startup, effective presentations, user validation, product validations. Today we'll be talking about metrics and business models. As you probably know, this is the third session of 6 sessions that we will have in total during the program. These sessions will be regarding the most important topics that we believe you need to know when launching a project. And all of the sessions will be broadcast to public, except the hackathon that will be only for the participants. And just a quick reminder, the second reminder that I do, but this one not in mute. Just a quick reminder, the structure of the session. From 5 to 6, we will have a talk and Q&A with the first guest. And from 6 to 7, we will have another guest, also with the possibility of Q&A. For the Q&A, just please send your questions or doubts through YouTube and the YouTube chat, and we will have some time at the end of the session of every talk to reply them. And yeah, now again, the second time that I introduce the speakers. Now, okay, begin the third session introducing the great speakers. Kaylin Emelan, Director of Operations at Getro, ex-Delivero, and on track, usual mentor at Teton Valley, and member of the board also of Teton Valley. It's a pleasure to be with her today. And also Justo, who is Global Head of Product at Universia and co-founder of Quantified Reading, and as well a very usual mentor of Teton Valley. So now, yeah, I will do it. Let's introduce. I have the pleasure to introduce Caitlin, and welcome to the stage. Hello, Caitlin. I think you were sending a message to me,
Hi,
right?
Sergio. Yeah, I sent you a WhatsApp, and then I started to call your phone, but you got the news.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. No, no problem. I think people is probably sending some YouTube. Hey, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah. Okay. No, you can. Okay.
Mhm.
Welcome, Caitlin. I think you already shared the screen.
Yeah, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Just give me a second. Yeah, I will disappear. See you.
Bye, Sergio. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be back for this session, and today we're going to start off by talking about business models, and then with Justo, you'll get much deeper into the world of metrics, which is, in my opinion, one of the best talks in Tetuan Valley. So, to introduce myself a little bit, I am Caitlin, as Sergio said. I started my career and time in Spain at Tetuan Valley. I spent a couple years in investment banking, and then a ex Tetuan Valley alumni, Diana Morato, called me and asked me if I wanted to come be a right hand at Deliveroo in Spain. So I was at Deliveroo for 3 years, where we grew the team from, I think it was 50 when I started, to 200 people. And that was through, as you can see, the little Tetuan Valley logo, through a Tetuan Valley alumni. After that, I moved over to on truck. So instead of moving food on bikes, I was moving pallets on trucks, where I was responsible for international expansion and then the Netherlands as the country manager. And then another Tetuan Valley 10 years ago sponsored an edition of Startup Bootcamp, which is a European accelerator. There I met an alumni, Raul, who called me in January and asked me what I was doing and if I was happy. I said yes, but he asked me for a phone call anyway. And I ended up at Getro. So Getro is a platform whose mission is to help facilitate introductions. So we all know that the best referrals happen through people we meet in Tetuan Valley, for example, as my career trajectory shows. The idea with Getro is to kind of help us to become aware of the talent as well as the opportunities all around us, and to help facilitate what tends to happen in the real world, but have it happen in a more scalable way, because we often don't know who might be open to a change and who we know who is looking for talent. So yeah, and Getro's first project, which is probably important to know for the sake of this chat, because I mentioned it a few times, is currently we're offering a job board aggregator to venture capitalists. So they pay a subscription fee for that. But we'll get into that when we talk about business models in a little bit. So that is me and a little bit of my background. So what is a business model? A business model is kind of everyone here, and I think like our first mandate when we work at startups is to create products and services that provide value to the customers. And usually, since we're businesses and not non-for-profits, those customers, we like it when they pay us for that value that we're adding. So for me, a business model is kind of the intersection between the value proposition that you are creating through your product and the way that you are monetizing that value proposition. So who cares about business models? Well, the first person actually who doesn't care about your business model usually are your customers. They care because they're paying for it, but that's actually not, and I think a lot of times startups commit the error of in not talking to their customers about value add and services and product, but you kind of jump in. I would say when you're talking to customers, be conscientious of the alignment between the value that your product offers and what you're asking for in exchange for that value, but that when you're communicating with customers, the communication should always be more around the value and the service provided, maybe not so much the business model. To give you a tangible example, Facebook doesn't present itself as a B2C or a business to customer service saying, Caitlin, we would love you to be part of our advertising platform. Advertising is their business model. What they're selling to their customers is a social network experience or the value of being able to stay in touch with all of the various people that you've come across in your life. So who does care? Mostly, and sometimes primarily, usually when you're talking about business models, you're either talking about your company internally or you're talking about your stakeholders externally. So usually your investors are the primary people who you're going to be going around talking to about business models. For early stage startups, those are friends, family, fools, acceleration programs like Startup Bootcamp, business angels who are people who tend to invest their own money. So there you can probably get away with leaning, depending on the profile of your business angels, you can get away with more or less talking about a business model versus a value proposition. And that depends a lot on whether you're talking to a business angel who's investing because they're passionate about the space that you're in, or you're talking to a business angel who's more of a professional business angel, or somebody who comes from the startup sector, in which case they're going to be quite interested in how you're planning on making money, since any of these investors are hoping to receive a return on their investment at some point in the future. And last but not least, are venture capitalists, which will be kind of the theme of your sixth session. So I'm not going to get too far into that. But your investors care a lot about your business model. And last but not least, the person who I think should care the most about your business model, honestly, is you and your team. At the end of the day, you are the first investor in your company, and you are dedicating your time to building this product. So you yourself also need to have some visibility on the sustainability of the project, whether it has legs, and that allows you to make a lot of decisions about what kind of startup you want to run. There are passion projects where the business model, as long as more or less you're breaking even and it doesn't cost money, that's sufficient. And then there are people who set out to build unicorns, and your business model is what's going to help you figure out kind of aligning the decisions that you make with the objectives that you have for whatever this project is for you. So to make all of this less hypothetical and more tangible, we're going to talk about my business. My business, my fictional business, is the Underpants Gnomes, which for anyone who watches South Park is an excellent episode. And so my Underpants Gnomes help me to run my business. And I guess this to me is my favorite kind of image related to business models, because collecting the underpants is what we do. Profit is what we're aiming for. And that big question mark in the middle is where our business model kicks in. So what do we do? Well, my Underpants Gnomes get underpants. We package those underpants and then we sell them to men because men are notoriously not great at keeping their underpants in immaculate conditions. So what we do is we package our underpants and we ship them to men, and we do that once every 3 months. So that way our customers always have fresh underwear at their disposal, and they don't have to think about going to the store or having their girlfriend or their mother complain and go out and get them for them. And in exchange for this quarterly subscription underwear delivery, we accept 10 years for every single one of our delivery. So that is kind of the process of what we do and how we're making money. Can anyone, I guess there's the chat, right? You guys are all live on the chat. What do you guys think the business model is for my underpants business? Let me see if I can see any comments here. Any takers? Guesses on that? Or am I not seeing comments anymore? Nope. 3, 2, 1. All right. Nobody's being brave. So the business model here is, you could talk about it as an asset sale, because essentially what we're doing, there we go, subscription. Now I see people. Exactly. So one thing we're doing is we're not selling a service. Retail, it's an asset sell, right? Because we're selling a product in exchange for money. But the way that we're selling it is as a subscription. And that's when I kicked off. I talked about what Getro is doing a little bit. We charge like a monthly subscription service. And actually, in the world of business models, subscription is one of the favorite children. And that's because the revenue is recurring. So if I was just at El Corte Inglés or Zara, and I was selling underwear amongst other things, there would be no visibility that someone who came in January is going to come back in April to buy underwear again. So subscription service, the reason why investors like it so much is because there's that visibility that not only do I have a sale in January, but there will be another one in April, and there will be another one in July, etc. And that this revenue has a forecasted future that continues to build. There's another way that we could run this. So if the underwear is ours, then, as in my gnomes are manufacturing the underwear, then that would be an asset sale. But imagine for a second that what my gnomes are doing are just, they're operational gnomes. They're not manufacturing gnomes. And what they're doing is they're taking underwear from different sellers, and we are selling other people's underwear through our platform. So maybe El Corte Inglés is selling their underwear at 10 months or 10 euros every 3 months, but Zara is selling theirs at 12 euros every 3 months. In that case, our subscription service would be acting as a broker, because we're not actually producing those, and we would probably be taking a commission on that as opposed to receiving the full amount of the subscription fee. So just to kind of highlight the differences, if you are manufacturing yourself the good, then you have to pay for all of the labor and the materials that go into the underwear and all of those things. That's one kind of business model, and it is much more costs associated with it. But your revenue figure is also higher because you're getting all 10 of those dollars and they're going to you, but maybe you're spending 8 of those to actually go out, manufacture the underwear, get the materials, etc., and do the shipping. Now, if we had a brokerage model and we ourselves were not creating the underwear and we were just selling other people's underwear, then we would be getting much less revenue. Imagine we were taking a 20% commission. So instead of that 10 euros every month, we'd be getting 2 euros every month. But we would not have to handle any of the manufacturing costs. So other people would have to deal with getting the materials, doing the underwear, etc. Everything would pretty much be profit, except for whatever it would cost us to get that underwear from the manufacturers and sell it to the final customers. So that's kind of the difference between a subscription service where you yourself are providing whatever the good or service is versus a brokerage where you're selling on behalf of other people. OnTruck, for example, is also a brokerage service. So OnTruck doesn't actually own any trucks. It's an asset-free business. But what it does do is work with a collection of either carriers who have, it's just a guy with a truck, or maybe a small business that has 10 trucks, and allows them to acquire mass, both on the trucking side, as far as trucks go, and on the demand side, in terms of people who need things moved in trucks. And what you're doing as a broker is you're bringing these two dynamics together, the supply and the demand side, but you yourself do not actually have anything that you are manufacturing and are selling that you produce. Another business model, which is quite common today, is around advertising. So, and this goes back to the initial statement of what you do versus what your business model is. Google is a tool for you and me and all of us to search for information on the internet. That is not Google's business model, as I think most of you are probably aware. Google makes money by charging the search results, most of the time companies, to appear first in those search results, and they are able to monetize that positioning as advertising. Google also has an entire fleet of other goods and services that they provide, but I'm talking about just the search engine functionality at this point. So that's an advertising business model. A thing that comes up pretty often with startups is, do we have to pick just one, and is there just one? The reality is many startups embark using more than one business model. So if you think about Spotify, you can, and actually, I think the logo on this is aging my slides, because I think it's an old logo. But Spotify, you can use as a user, the value it provides is you can either have a free service where you have to listen to ads, or you can pay for a premium service that has a few features that the free one doesn't, and you also don't have to listen to advertisements. If you are not paying for a good or a service, the common phrase is you're what's being sold. So despite the fact that Spotify as a business is not charging its users for the free service, it is making money because it's able to monetize those users with companies who want to advertise on their platform. And when the users are paying, well, they're making money directly from the users through a subscription service. So there is definitely an opportunity to combine business models. And there are extremely exaggerated versions of this. This is something that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of, but Glovo, Deliveroo, all of the food delivery services actually have many multiple business models. So the first one is they're brokering food, right? Glovo itself does not make, and I'm going to focus on the food service for ease of explanation. Glovo itself does not make food. Goico makes the hamburger. Glovo does not currently produce the hamburger. So whenever Glovo is selling a Goico hamburger, I should have not used something that began with a G. Glovo is charging Goico anywhere between 10 and 30% commission on whatever the sale is. So that is the commission revenue that they're acquiring from that business model, which is essentially commission and brokerage they're pretty much synonyms. The next is whenever you get your Goico order, usually there's like a little fee that's a service charge. That's a charge that me as a hungover person who's ordering a Goico burger on a Sunday, I am paying that money directly to Glovo for the service that Glovo offers, which is taking that hamburger from Goico and bringing it to my house. So Goico is charging the restaurant, it's charging the user for the delivery fee, And then also there are some users who, instead of paying for a service, which is the delivery fee, they pay that delivery fee as a subscription model, which is if you pay, I think it's €6 a month, anything you order off of Glovo has free delivery, very similar to Amazon Prime. And last but not least, when you open Glovo and you look for the word hamburger, many times the results show up. And this is actually, Glovo uses this model much less than actually Just Eat did, which is kind of the pioneer in this space. So Just Eat, when you search for Chinese food, the very first result that shows up, that person is paying to show up first. Much like with a Google search, companies pay to be the first result that's shown. So Glovo actually has at least 4 different business models, and there's a few other ones as well, mixed into the wider umbrella of their business. So here's a list, and I'll pass everyone the presentation. You don't need to like jot this down or screenshot it. But here's a list of kind of all, this is not in any way, I don't think this is an exhaustive list, but a whole bunch of different business models that exist out there in the universe. And so now let's kind of go back and talk about one last thing that's very important in terms of business models. In business models, what we usually want to see is that these 2 acronyms have the following relationship. CAC, which is customer acquisition cost, always needs to be less than lifetime value. Putting that into plain English, whatever it costs us to acquire customers, basically to build our business, should always be less than the value that those customers are providing. Imagine that it cost me €200 to acquire every single one of my customers from my Underwear Gnomes business, and most people were only using it one time. So I'd be spending $200 to make $10. That doesn't make any sense. That's not a business. That's a black hole of money. And realistically, what we want to see, and this is kind of the golden rule in subscription models, is we want to see that the lifetime value is at least 3 times more than whatever that customer acquisition cost is. And this for me is kind of what passes the laugh test. So I don't know if y'all have seen Indiana Jones, but there's like this scene shown in this picture where this guy with a sword is like doing a whole bunch of fancy sword dances, and Indy just pulls out his gun and shoots him. That's kind of the laugh test, is when you're starting off, you're not going to have great data for either of these 2 numbers. Basically, it's going to be some mix of made up and not enough data points to be like statistically significant. But it's important to start thinking about it. It's important to start measuring it. It's important to start looking at it, because doing some of these back of the envelope calculations can help you figure out before you get started whether you're starting and kicking off a business that has legs and is going to be economically solvent. So let's talk about customer acquisition cost. In order to calculate our customer acquisition cost, we need to know how you get customers. And the first thing most people say is, I don't know, because you are just starting off, or it's an idea phase, or you've only got a couple of customers, most of them have been inbound, whatever. There are many, many, many different sources, and Justo gets into this much deeper in his talk, so I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole. There are many different sources to acquire customers. And actually, there's a few exaggerated venture capitalists who say that if somebody comes in and tells me their customer acquisition cost is 50, I kick them out of the room. Because there isn't one customer acquisition cost. There's one customer acquisition cost for each channel. And then as a business, if you accumulate all of those costs and all of that acquisition, you can come up with a blended one for your company. But there isn't just one. There's one per channel. So first thing you need to think about are, what are my channels for acquiring customers? So in my fake business, we're going to assume that I do 3 things in order to acquire customers. The first is search engine marketing. So I spend money on Google AdWords so that when somebody types in underwear, I'm first up there. The next is I go to startup events and clothing and retail events, and I hand out business cards to customers, or I do flyering that I think people might like. So maybe I go to a white collar boxing fight where there's a whole bunch of men, because we've decided that that is my target persona. And at the door of the boxing event, I'm handing out flyers with discounts on them for people to try our service. And last but not least, I have an intern who is running our Instagram account, is running our TikTok, is running our LinkedIn, and we are actively sourcing through the content that we produce on social media. That's also an inbound channel for us to attract attention and customers for the underwear business. So again, you're like, okay, Galen, these are activities, but I don't know how much they cost. And the answer is, it's okay that you don't, but we can make some assumptions and we can kind of make up some numbers to start to get a feel of what might be realistic. So going back to how we acquire customers, we have these 3 channels. Search engine marketing, we can even start playing with this with a very small budget. And the way that most paid like search engine marketing goes is there's like a point of inflection. So if I spend 50 euros, maybe I get 1 or 2 people, which would mean that each customer I acquire costs either 50 or 25 euros. But maybe I ramp that up to 1,000, and from that 1,000, I get 100. Well, that means that each one that I acquired is 10. So there's this point where as your spend increases, it becomes more efficient. And this works really well if you think about it with like offline advertising. That's exceptionally true. So if you just put up one poster on one bus stop in Madrid, you probably will convert no one. Offline advertising is also hard because it's also hard to measure attribution, but that's a different thing in and of itself. Now, if you spend $500,000 and you cover every single bus stop in Madrid, as well as metro stop, etc., for an entire week, then your results are going to be much more significant. So each channel has like a sweet spot of when you start, if you spend small amounts of money, your return usually isn't that good. As you spend more money, your return tends to get better. And then there's a part where it kind of staffs off, and then your return isn't getting any better. And if anything, it becomes less efficient again. So let's pretend that, yeah, we're a startup. We don't have a lot of money. We haven't had our VC round yet, but we can maybe spend 200 to 1,000 in a month in Google AdWords to see that, you know, our results are coming up first, and we do a test. Then we go to an event, and thanks to us, we're part of luckily we're part of the Tetuan Valley community, and Sergio helps us get an invite to the event for free. But if we had to pay for the event, then it probably would have cost us about 700. And social media, we have an employee. And you're like, okay, Caitlin, that's nice, but I don't have any revenue. I haven't even incorporated this company yet. I don't know how much an employee might cost me. That's okay. You're the employee. You are the first employee of your company always. So what you can do is you can spend, for example, 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week or 40 hours for 1 week and only do social media as though you were the social media employee receiving a salary. And you can basically attribute cost to the time that you spend doing this activity. So what basically we're attributing 700 euros to this event. We're attributing kind of a entry-level salary for the social media job that actually we're just doing ourselves. So realistically, we spent $700. We've done activities across 3 different channels, and we can measure for each one of those activities how successful they were. Google is really easy because Google itself, to justify the amount of money that we pay, is really good at helping us to understand the attribution. You spent this much money, you got that. So through your analytics dashboard, you know that through your investment in Google, you acquired 10 customers. Our event, each one of our discount codes has a unique number on it. So we know that through that event, we got 10 customers. Now, we live in a post-pandemic world, or still currently pandemic world, where most of the events are online. That's even better. We can share like a bit.ly link or other, and then we can also through that link attribute the customers that we acquired through the online event to that event and say, okay, this event that really didn't cost us any money, but could have cost us $700. We acquired 10 customers. Same thing for the social media. No actual money left our bank account, but we dedicated full-time work to this for a month, and we acquired 20 customers. So for each one of these channels, then we know that our customer acquisition cost is 70, 70, and 90 respectively. So this is kind of checking the box of that VC comment around, I don't care what, you don't have one customer acquisition cost, you have one per channel. But we know that on average, we have altogether spent 3,200, or what would have been 3,200 if we actually had to pay for these things. And we have acquired 40 customers, which means that our average cost per user, customer acquisition cost, is $80. Now, just like we talked about each channel having an optimal point, you also have an optimal channel blend. So if I look at this, my first instinct might be, why are we spending money on social media then if our social media is less efficient or more expensive than events and search engine marketing? The answer is because social media builds what's called top of funnel awareness a lot of the time. So your social media actually might be playing into the success of your search engine marketing, because maybe that person has seen a post, and then the time they search on Google, they click on the link, but maybe they only clicked on the link because they had already seen some of the content on social media, or because your name already kind of rang a bell for them, and that helps to convert. So one, it's not good to only do one type of channel acquisition, or at least in a mature strategy. It's good to diversify against a few different types of channels, even if some are more expensive than others. And there also is a relationship which should be respected between what's called like top of funnel or top of mind awareness, and what is actually more like conversion type marketing activities. Marketing activities that convert are more metrics friendly. Social offline marketing are very hard to measure attribution. But usually the interplay of the two, especially for anything that is, I'd say this is business to business sales as well as business to consumer sales. The interplay of the two is quite important in a mature strategy. Okay, so now we know our customer acquisition cost is 80. We have to figure out our lifetime value. So lifetime value is how much revenue is each one of these customers generating for us. So to figure that out, we would have to know how many months people are going to continue using our service. Do they use it for a year and then they tend to churn? We multiply that by the average amount that we pay. So by way of reminder, in a calendar year, we will have 4 transactions from each one of our customers, and each one of them will pay 10 euros each. So that's pretty clear that 40 euros a year. And then for how long are they going to stay a customer? 5 years? Well, if it was 5 years, then the lifetime value would be 200. The truth is, we don't know how long people are going to stay customers. There's a few ways of figuring this out. So one is you can look for comparable companies. So lucky for us, there's this thing. There actually is this is called Manpacks, and it's the same business as my underwear business. So I can look to see if there's any information on Manpacks, or maybe talk to ex-customers of Manpacks to ask them an interview and say, hey, generally speaking, how long do people stay customers of this kind of service? I can also look at other subscription models. So there's wine subscription services, there are diaper subscription services, there are beauty product subscription services, and I can gather some market intel which says, the stuff in the box business model. On general, I can pull a few people who aren't direct competitors and kind of figure out how long people tend to be customers of those kinds of platforms. You can also do, and this is a little bit more complicated. You can also take the inverse of your churn, which would be like, imagine that you were churning, I'm going to use easy numbers. Imagine that you were churning every one of your cycles, 20% of your customers. So 5 people order 1 month, and then of those 5 people, in 3 months, the next cohort, only 4 of them order. So then we would go like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So that is 5 times, that would be 15 months, which would be a year and a quarter. So we could multiply that and say the lifetime value in that scenario, if we had 20% churn, would be 50 euros, because we would have a year and then 1 more, and then all of our customers would churn. That's another way of calculating it. So there are multiple ways that we can get to a lifetime value. But at the end of the day, if you're just starting a business, and especially if it's a new business, you're not actually going to know the number of months. So another way of looking at it is saying it doesn't matter. With a customer acquisition cost of 80 euros, we know that we need at least customers to stay customers for 2 years to cover our costs. So that's another way of looking at it, is not trying to come up with a made up number, especially if you can't find market intel and you don't have figures about churn because you don't have, you're not measuring churn yet in your product, or you don't have mature enough cohorts for that data to be reliable. You can just say, we don't know right now, but we know minimally the threshold needs to be 2 years. But we have to go back to that 3x rule. So the golden rule for subscription services is for the lifetime value to be at least 3x. So that means instead of 2 years, we actually need people to stay customers for 6 years. 6 years is a long time to do anything, to be very frank. So I would look at this and go, nah, I don't buy it. This isn't really an investable business from an investor perspective. As a founder, maybe I take that information and go, okay, my company is never going to be a VC-backed company because it doesn't follow this golden rule of 3x. That's a good thing to know. Then I can ask myself, honestly, am I really passionate about this, or am I just doing it to get rich? And if I'm really passionate about underwear, maybe I'm content with believing that people will be customers for 3 years and I want to make a meager profit on it. But I know that I'm not going to be scaling the way that venture capitalists ask startups to scale. So we've kind of sort of come to the conclusion that my underwear model is not the most viable business model we've ever seen. There's other things we can do too. We can do things to get the customer acquisition cost down, and we can also do things to increase the lifetime value. So ways that we can get customer acquisition cost down. Inside sales. Inside sales is when you continue selling to customers that you already have. You can also do things like member get member programs. So everything, if this is a B2C company, I can ask all of my customers and we can say free underwear for a year if you help us to recommend 20 customers. That doesn't cost us any money. And actually our acquisition channels might be, because free underwear for a year for one person is only 40 euro. We already saw that our customer acquisition cost through other channels is way more expensive than that. So if we got all of our customers to do that, that would drive our customer acquisition cost down. And maybe this could become a viable venture-backed business. You can do things like viral marketing, which viral marketing as a strategy is a terrible idea. You can't plan on things being viral. You can try for it and it's worth trying, but it doesn't always happen that well. You can look at things like partner sales. So maybe me going out into the world and selling my underwear subscription service doesn't work very well. But maybe I can partner with a perfume service and try to, instead of selling to men, get them to cross-sell our subscription service to the women that they sell makeup to, and do a campaign like, tired of the man in your life always having gross underwear? Here's a discount. Try the underwear gnomes business. That's another way of doing it. And then usually you would give that partner a percentage of the sales that they are selling on your behalf. You can try to improve the channel optimacy, which we already talked about. Sometimes that means investing more money. Sometimes it means investing less money. Sometimes it means trying new channels. We could change our mix. And then there's a few other options that I have in there too. But just because the customer acquisition cost at first blush is not attractive, that's a good thing to know, but it doesn't mean the road needs to end there. There are definitely things that we can do around that. Same thing for lifetime value. So lifetime value can also be increased. So this is something that we can change the tiers of our pricing. So this is actually something that is very true at certain companies where, I'm going to use Getro as an example. Our pricing goes from $200 per month if you have less than 30 companies in your portfolio, to $400 to $600 to $800. In the real world, we actually, and that's what's called linear, right? Each step change is $200 more. In the real world, we've actually learned that demand is not linear. Demand is actually exponential. So instead of charging our highest tier, $800 per month, we actually probably could be charging a lot more than that, because as venture capitalists have much bigger portfolios, the demand to showcase those jobs and to provide value for those companies is actually much higher. So reevaluating the tiers. So maybe we shouldn't be offering everyone $10 underwear. Maybe we should have a $20 tier of premium underwear, and maybe that sells much better than the 10 one. And that would help us to increase our lifetime value. You can do things like retention schemes. So we talked about the fact that our churn was 20% month over month. That's really high. But maybe I do something to keep people engaged. Maybe we do kind of retention marketing, or we send more content, or we change the look of our underwear with each season. And then that makes it so that people are less likely to churn. Maybe people are churning because they already have enough white underwear, and what they want is some winter gingerbread themed underwear. Bundling with other products. So maybe people exhaust underwear after a while, but maybe we partner with like a whiskey subscription service and we bundle those things together and people stay more engaged for more time, etc. So there are other strategies that we can pursue to also increase our lifetime value, need be. So when we're thinking about what business model is best for us, what we have to ask ourselves are two questions. One is like, what's core? What is the core value that we're offering? In my case, we would have to do some customer interviews, because maybe what's core and what the value that we're providing in our core value is people love our underwear. So if I'm thinking about a manufacturing where I'm doing asset sales, where I'm selling my own underwear, if I move into a brokerage business model, I'm losing that core value and I'm disappointing the people who come along for the ride. Whereas maybe the value proposition that people are most passionate about is variety of underwear. And they want something different and new and fun every 3 months. And that's what keeps them on their toes. In which case, moving from an asset sale to a brokerage model makes a lot more sense, because I'm only going to be able to produce so many different types of underwear. But if I'm brokeraging, the providers of underwear are not limitless, but there are many more options out there in the market that I could be taking to really double down on that value proposition. So what you have to ask yourself is, what is the core value I'm providing, and who cares about that value? So maybe, and this is the other thing to kind of think about, is maybe men, who was our primary like buyer persona, maybe men don't actually care that much at all. Maybe it's the women in their lives who are like, I'm so tired of looking at these disgusting underwear and they have holes in them and I have to throw them out all the time. Like maybe we're targeting the wrong person. So maybe the value proposition to men, we end up learning, is much weaker than the value proposition to women. And we have to switch, and we can address our business model to better fit the person who cares. So those are the questions to ask yourselves when you're contemplating options of business model: is what's core to the product and the value that you're offering, and who cares the most about it? And I think the other thing that's worth reminding people is that you are not married to your business model for forever. So maybe we start doing a subscription and asset sale. As we're growing, we realize that the people who care the most care about variety. So we switch to a brokerage, like we just said. And then we realize that also there's some advertising potential, because maybe our lifetime value just wasn't enough to clear our customer acquisition cost. But maybe because underwear is such a silly topic, we get a whole bunch of traffic, and we're actually able to monetize that traffic to redirect it to other people. And we can charge money to people to advertise on our web page. And maybe that's the thing that makes it so that it's an investable business. Or at least maybe that's the thing that makes it so even if it's not a VC investable business, it's a business that's profitable for us to run. So going back to this reflection on what kind of company do you want to own? What kind of company do you want to run? And that these things can evolve. Actually, a pragmatic example of how this has evolved in the real world is Just Eat was what's called a Generation 1 model. So if y'all remember, like 10 years ago, when you ordered on Just Eat, at least I'm talking about Spain, it was a whole bunch of like bad kebab places and questionable Chinese restaurants. But those were the only people who did their own delivery at that point in time. Then the Generation 2 players came in with Glovo and Deliveroo. And I actually remember Deanna, who hired me, was a great friend of mine. I was like, what are you doing? People already order on Just Eat. Nobody's going to use this. And I was wrong. And that's because when you're able to offer delivery from restaurants that never deliver, you're able to offer from a much wider variety of restaurants. And that evolution was very core to what people care about and what the core value proposition was. And variety and selection was the core value proposition of the Generation 2 players. Then what happened? Then it became a war to lock customers in. There was a barrier to ordering, which was if you have to pay for a delivery fee every time, that gets expensive. So then they launched the Generation 3 subscription services, both to retain customers and also to decrease the barriers of entry, because these are models where the costs decrease the more volume that you have. But the curious thing is also these Generation 2 players also moved in to the Generation 1 because they realized that there are lots of restaurants that do offer their own delivery. And by not showing those restaurants, they were actually hurting their own core value proposition, which is they were showing less selection. And that's what customers valued. So actually, these players not only moved upstream into subscription models, they also moved back to the historical traditional model to compete with Just Eat directly in their own business model. So you're not married to your business model, and these things can change over time, depending on what the needs of your business are and the needs of your investors. So those are business models. That's my talk. I think one other thing I always like to touch on in this, and I think we have 5 minutes, is break even, because that's something that comes up a lot. And we talked about it a little bit. There was a break even that we mentioned in terms of the relationship between the customer acquisition cost and the lifetime value. But people ask a lot about break even, generally speaking, when it comes to business models. So just as like an illustration, this is a very simplified P&L, which is a profit and loss statement, or a cuenta de resultados. And here we have our subscription, which you can see the revenue growing over time, yay, and our costs are pretty much fixed. So if this was our revenue evolution and our cost evolution, we would break even in July. There's another thing that we should think about too, which is cash flow. So sometimes people sign up for things and they get their first month free, or in some business models, you don't charge until after the person receives the service. That wouldn't be the case in this model, but just by way of illustration. If we charged our customers a month later, then the break-even point for us to be cash flow positive would be in August. Then there's another thing we should be looking at, which is how that accumulates over time. So as any of us who have a credit card know, that we're not allowed to just build up negative cash flow over time. So if we go from losing $550 in January to $540 in February to $530 in March, and every month it's getting better, and we're like, yay, we're getting cash flow or positive, our bank is still saying, nay, we're not going to let you keep running up debt to this amount. So another thing that's really important to look at is to make sure that you're accumulating your losses and your benefit over time. And then the $500 question that everyone ever asks is, I need to fundraise, but I don't know how much to ask. When you're looking at your business model and you're looking at your costs and your revenue, you want to look at this accumulated cash figure, and the amount that you want to fundraise is always, when you look at your accumulated cash, you would pick the lowest point in this evolution. So in our case, we start becoming cash flow positive in August. So our lowest point is this negative 3,200 figure, because after that, then it starts getting positive again. So if this was my real cash flow statement, I would need to raise at least probably 3,500, because you always want to have some buffer in case things go wrong. So you kind of, and actually it's usually more than that. It's kind of whatever your lowest point is, and then I'd add like a 20% buffer on there. But that is kind of the magic number answer to how much am I supposed to be fundraising. It's your lowest accumulated cash point plus something of buffer in case things go wrong. Or another way of looking at it traditionally is having enough cash in the bank to be able to survive for 12 to 18 months is another good way of looking at that. And I think that is all. So yeah. If there are any questions, feel free to shoot them across in the chat. And one other thing I'm happy to mention while you guys are writing those questions is, so that's my Twitter handle, the @kmelon, but that's also my email address. So if you put the arroba on the other side, so kmelon@gmail.com. I know a lot of times people hear talks like this and they're so generic that they're not directly applicable to whatever their business is. So if anyone has any questions or wants like a half hour of help on whatever their business model is, I'm more than happy to help out with specific concerns as needed. All right, Ignacio, the sort of customer acquisition cost I showed for marketing and sales, where do we factor other costs such as manufacturing? That's a really good question. So there's two ways you can do this. What I would actually do is I would pull those out of the lifetime value equation. So let's go back to this guy. It's actually a really good question. The first time anyone's ever asked that. All right. So if we're looking at this, right? So the manufacturing costs don't go in the customer acquisition cost because it's not the cost that it takes us to acquire that customer. Now, if in our lifetime value, we were talking about what were we saying? We were saying 40 euros per month. We would actually take those manufacturing costs out of the lifetime value. So realistically, what we are our net revenue after costs, or what you could call like your it's your, you would either call it net revenue, or like gross profit after cost of goods sold. That's where that would go in a P&L. So what you would do is imagine it was 8 euros for us to make the underwear. Actually, let's be honest, underwear costs like 2 euros to make. So pretend it's 5 euros. So instead of 40 euros per year, we would actually be looking at 20 euros per year. And then what we need would be 4 years worth of, we would need to believe that our customers would stay customers for 4 years in order to overcome that customer acquisition cost threshold. So the answer is it would come out of lifetime value, not actually customer acquisition cost. Anybody else? Sergio, you're on pipeline.
Yeah. Okay, guys. If you have any other questions, just take the advantage to send it now. I mean, you already have the email, but it's always better if we can reply now, because everyone will hear the reply. Ignacio. It's okay. It's only Ignacio. Okay. If
All
there
right.
if there are no other questions, you already have the email, and as I said at the beginning, Caitlin is part of the community. So if you have any other questions or just need to contact Caitlin in any other moment, just feel free to reach me, and I'll try to introduce you if you lost the email or something like. So yeah, thank you very much for the session, Caitlin. As always, it's very interesting to hear you talk about business models and your experience, and that's something that most of the teams already and working are working currently on. So really a pleasure, Caitlin. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Sergio, and thanks to you guys. Sergio reached out to me. I'm not going to be able to make it to pitch practice tonight, which I'm sad about. So Sergio, if you guys are down to mentor any of the other weeks, shoot me an email and I'll try to jump on a different week. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the program.
See you, Caitlin. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, and now I'm happy to welcome Justo. As I said before, Justo is a global head of product at Universia and co-founder of Quantified Reading, and also is one of the usual mentors of Tetuan Valley. Let me introduce and welcome Justo to the stage. Hello.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Hey,
love,
Sergio.
love, love your name, Justo. Okay, it's coming.
Yeah, of course, always.
welcome to the stage, Justo. So much time no see you, even on
Yeah,
cam.
yeah, exactly. This is a pity, but yeah, we're getting here again.
Great. Okay, so let's try to share your screen, Justo.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see if you guys can see it.
Yeah. Okay, just give me a second, and I will disappear. Okay, see you.
All right. Okay, hello everyone. So first of all, before we start, when I was listening to Kate, there are two things I wanted to mention. First, amazingly, there are gingerbread thin underwear. I found it, so you can buy it if you want. So actually, Kate's business models may actually work. And the second thing is that take a look at this article if you can from A16Z, which is one of the main VCs in the world, about multimodal business models. I think it matches very well Kate's talk. So it was a great talk by Connie Chan a couple of years ago, and there's an article about it. Okay, So about the talk that we are going to have today, yeah, Sergio introduced me, so I've been part of the community for many years. So basically I'm a product manager, so that's why I I enjoy making products, even though in the day to day you have to do more things. First thing is, this is a talk about metrics, but basically fact metrics. I mean, you have to know your P&L, and this is. I mean, it's kind of crazy to start like this, talk about metrics, but this is the truth. I mean, everything that there are like three types of people, right? People who don't believe in metrics. And they don't care about anything else. That's a mistake. We'll talk about that. People, and the problem is with people who love metrics. I'm part of that group, and you get to love the MRR, the lifetime value, as Kate said, the retention curves or whatever. That you forget that this is a business, and once you start, I'm pretty sure that some of you are really seasoned entrepreneurs already, but some of you may not. This is the first thing you have to know. And this is not a talk about P&L or cash flow or balance, and Kate knows much more than me, but you should really know this just to start, okay? Since we have 45 more minutes, then let's start to talk about metrics and other things, but please take that into account. Okay, so we are supposedly in a lean environment, right? I mean, you know about lean startup, all that stuff. So basically, we form a hypothesis. We have ideas, we build a product, we launch the minimum viable product or whatever it is, we measure it, and with the information we get from the MVP, we learn, and then we continue, we pivot, we stop, we do whatever we want, okay? We typically don't do well, basically because having an idea is great, everyone loves to have an idea, and but you can check academic research and see that brainstorming and things like that don't work at all. Is much better instead of having a brainstorming session just to go home and think about the solution. Then if you are technical or you have access to technical talents, then building a product or a service is great, is beautiful, and it's relatively easy to start. The problem is that most of the times people don't measure correctly. 5-6 years ago, I would say that people didn't measure. I think now everyone is aware that we need to measure, that we need to use tools like Google Analytics or others. But the thing is, whether we don't do it or don't do it right, then if there's no data or the data is not good, there's no learning. And if there's no learning, at the end of the day, the final decision about how your product should evolve is going to be taken by the hippo, by the highest paid person in the building. Okay, it's going to be the CEO of your startup, or it's going to be the the director or the head of product or whatever. And while those people may be very smart, very intelligent, very whatever, the truth is that most of the times they're not going to be right, or at least you would like to have their insights balanced by the data that you are able to provide. Okay, so you need to measure, and you need to measure right, and then you need to accept what you measure. Or the issue that we typically have is, okay, we install the Google Analytics in our first website. We start to play around with Twitter, and we get like 100 tweets. And out of those 100 tweets, 99 of them tell that your product sucks, that you should go hang yourself or something, because it's amazing how bad you build your product. But then you really go towards the other single tweet that says that your product is good, that they love your product, maybe without taking into account that that tweet may come from your mother, or from your brother, or from your sister, or from whoever, instead of actually thinking very deeply about whether what you're building makes sense for the market that you're trying to build for. Of course, there are always counter examples, and that's why we typically are in denial and try to say, okay, well, maybe what I have to find is the segment for that specific tweet. That's good. But if after a few iterations you find that still have the single tweet from your mother, maybe it's time to to take that advice and think about what to do with your product. Okay. Well, what I'm going to be talking about in the following minutes is not about just getting metrics to work. It's really easy to get lots of metrics now. You can install Google Analytics for free. You can install Amplitude for 10 million events, I think, for free. There are many tools that you can start working for free, but there are two issues here. First is that you create a dashboard that might have tens or hundreds or even thousands of metrics, and that's not good. Okay, not good at all. Actually, everything that I'm going to tell you now comes actually from from many people who were implementing balanced scorecards in the 90s and came up with huge dashboards that actually were very, very difficult to manage, and it was very difficult to actually find good actionable decisions based on those metrics. Okay, that's the main problem. Okay, um, in order to avoid that, there are some models, and the one that we're going to use here is called the R model. Probably some of you already have heard about it. It's also called the metrics for pirates because R is R. Okay, but actually, it's a model that came up like 12, 13 years ago, something like that, or maybe a little bit less than that. That basically is, it's as simple as it's really, really simple. What it really says is okay, a product has a life cycle. Okay, in general. So in general, every digital and even non-digital product or service starts with an acquisition phase, where what you're trying to do is to make yourself known. Okay, I will say the same thing, but unless your surname is Zuckerberg or Musk, nobody knows you. So you have to make yourself known, your product or your service known. You need to convince people to go to your website, to download your app, or to open the door of your bakery if you have something physical. So that's the first phase. The second phase is activation. So even if someone visits your website, the only information you're going to get from that is a visit. Okay, it's a visit. What happens when the person leaves your website? You don't know anything about that person. So you need some way to activate or to make the person to register into your service. So you are gonna work in order to get their email address, their phone number, their snail address, whatever it is, so you can continue having a conversation with that person or group of persons. Then we have the retention stage. In the retention stage, what we want is for people to come back. Um, Again, you may be able to make someone visit your website to leave an email address, but because you're also a customer in B2C and B2B services, that you give your email address to someone doesn't mean that you're going to use that service again. So you are always trying to make people to provide value to your potential customers so that they come back to your service. Here we may be talking about paid services or not yet. It doesn't matter. The thing is that you want people to come back. Then let me go back to refer later on. Then of course we get to the revenue stage, which is something as simple as you are great entrepreneurs, and I know you don't need to do this every day, but typically every day you're gonna want to have lunch, more or less. Oh, sorry, maybe some of you are in intermittent fasting, so maybe every 18 hours. But most of you are gonna want to have lunch every single day. So we need to get revenue. It can be direct or indirect. Kate has been talking a lot about that, so I will skip that part of the talk later on, or go a little faster. But this is critical. And then I leave the referral stage to the end because historically it's the last one that came to the typical sales or engagement models, which is it would be great if the customer acquisition cost that Kate mentioned before, if in order to here I have Samuel, for example, if I have to spend 40 euros to convince Samuel to become a paid user, a paid subscriber in my service, but if I get Samuel to convince other 9 of his friends to become paid subscribers in my service, then the 40 euro CAC has gone down to 4 euro CAC, because actually from 1 I got 10 users. If I'm able to do that consistently, I'm going to create a viral product, okay? And I'm going to become something like Dropbox or like WhatsApp or TikTok or things like this. But referral is more important than that. Not everyone is able to build that, and not every product is meant to be viral, okay? But even if I don't go from 4 euro CAC to 4 euro, but from 4 euro to 32, I'm actually making a great use of the referral stage to engage my users and make them love my product and help me decrease the CAC cost. Okay, so let's start with each of the stages. I'm seeing here Pablo and Carlos. I mean, how many times have you heard this talk? I mean, it's amazing. Thank you. uh, so acquisition, how do people find your site? That's the main question we're trying to ask. And here, Kate also mentioned, talked a little bit, at least I heard a little about what she said about typically you're going to use the trifecta or this kind of steps. Okay, so the first thing you need to know, what you need to do is to create your own media. Okay, that's very typical. You know what to do. You have to create your website, your uh, Facebook, or I'm sorry, Horizon page. Now that Facebook seems to have changed their name, so that we don't know what Facebook is anymore. You create your Twitter account, you create your TikTok account, whatever it is that it makes sense to your business. Okay, I always say that, at least in my experience, I typically go to the standard social media outlets or the typical things that typically work for the area I want to work with, the segment, to the audience I want to work with. And then I typically take a look at what the trends are and try to find whether some of the new potential trends are going to be good for me. When we built 24 Symbols, that was back in 2010, so it was like that was where the dinosaurs were on Earth or something like that. But Twitter was the hot thing in town, so we actually tested Twitter, and it worked pretty well. Now, I don't know, maybe I would test TikTok or something like this, or something new that is coming behind, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything, and especially if you want to find new segments or new audiences or younger audiences. Okay, then you typically go to the shared and earned media, where people start to share your stuff, to talk about your company, to talk about your service. It might be something as simple as a like, or it can be something as profound as an old blog post from someone in the industry, or it can be going to B2B, that you are able to make Gartner or Forrester or IDC to talk about your service. Okay, this is typically earned. In some cases it's paid, but most cases it's earned because you don't pay anything. Or maybe you get some influencer, that up and coming influencer, just to do a win-win situation. For example, in 24 Symbols, what we did is to share, to give away 1 year subscriptions to our book service book reading service, in exchange for the influencer to talk about books by using our platform, by using our app. Okay, and then you go to paid media, which is where you start, as Kate was saying, spending your money on Facebook, Twitter ads, Google ads, a banner on a bus stop, whatever it is that makes you get known and get conversions. Typically, you should start experimenting with paid media from the beginning, but only start to spend good money when you have found the product market fit. Okay, the worst thing you can do at the beginning is to spend lots of money when you still don't really know who your audience actually is. Okay, right. Just as mentioned, but what we did in 24 Symbols was to build the website, the blog at that time, the Facebook account, the Twitter account. I mentioned that, and we also did SEO, of course. This is a real page of 24 Symbols back in 2011 or something like this, where this is in 24 Symbols we had an ebook reading subscription service, a Spotify for books. So what we had there is public URL pages with the books, with the publishers, with the authors, and if users wanted, with the authors, with the users' profile pages. So what you see here is a real page from Profile Books. Is a UK publisher, with the books that we had at that time from that publisher, and then we enabled the users to share this page on social networks. Okay. SEO is more than being able to find, whether this should be H1 or H2 or H3 in HTML. Is understanding how interesting the big brands are in sharing your content. So, for example, at that time, and this is an old story, but it's still funny, we added the +1 button from Google Plus. Okay, even in 2010-11, that was stupid. I mean, nobody used Google Plus at all, except for one entity, Google itself. Okay, so Google treated very well those people who actually share things on Google and Google Plus. So just by clicking +1 4 times, just the four of the founding partners on a page allowed us to most of the times be able to position that page in the first page of results in Google in many related to many keywords. Okay, so that allowed us to do things like having Dracula be first or second in many countries when people were looking for that book. Okay, remember at the beginning we didn't have good commercial contacts with publishers, so we basically had public domain. So for us, it was very good, very important to get a good organic positioning. We didn't have enough money to pay to get on paid media. So trying to do things like this, just hacking the system, is something that you should try to find as soon as possible. In this case, it was one of our developers' idea to test it out, and it worked really well. Okay, I would say the same. Social media, this is beautiful, this is great, but if you can be on TV, just be on TV. Okay, even if everyone here says that goes to Netflix and they don't watch TV, that's bullshit. Okay, there's still lots of people that watch TV. Of course, it depends on your product, it depends on your audience, but still having like something like 15 seconds on La Uno on the broadcast news program, that was enough for us to more than multiply by 10 the number of visits that we have for a few days, and that allowed us to have lots of organic access and then a good conversion in terms of number of users. Okay. One thing that is important when talking about metrics is the vanity metrics. For me, so vanity metrics by definition is something that may be good for you in some specific moments and in your startup or product life, but typically they don't provide you or anyone else with any actual insights on your product's health. Okay, so it may be great to say that you have 3 million page views per month, but it actually says nothing about your product except for a press release or a first meeting with a VC or a meeting with a potential developer that you want to hire. Why? Because those 3 million page views may come from Mexico, this DF, when you have a bakery store in Segovia, in northern Madrid. So who cares whether those people from Mexico DF are actually accessing your beautiful website about how you bake your bread? What you need is actual information about how many of those page views actually are around the place where you want to sell. Okay. On the other hand, of course, if you are purely digital, having people from Mexico DF can be a great news, but you need to be able to find that. How do you find that? Segments, creating cohorts. We'll talk about that in a minute. You need to be able to massage your data and try to find more relevant information, than what you get by default from Google Analytics, for example. Okay, and that also goes to B2B. Okay, you go to an event, you put there a stand or a booth there. You give away €5 Starbucks cards to get leads from the visitors on the event, and at the end of the day, you get 250 leads. Well, that's great, and this is something you have to do as a part of the sales team. But the truth is that that's a vanity metric, because those 250 people are actually, what you're measuring there is the number of people who were interested in your €5 Starbucks card. They are not interested in your product. Okay, so saying that your sales team is able to reach 250 leads in a day, that's great, but that's not enough. And that's what a vanity metric typically is. It's great to have vanity metrics, but it's not enough, because it doesn't tell you enough about your service or product. Okay, the worst thing about this is when you believe on those vanity metrics. Using the vanity metrics is great, because that allows us to have a great press release, a great, again, relationship with the VC and the junior associate VC on the first meeting, but it's not enough. You need to go down and start doing your segmentation and your drilling down the data to find what your company is actually about. So what are the typical metrics on acquisition? You can find it here. Typically, very simple. These are, the acquisition stage. you're always going to get those metrics from the typical tools like Mixpanel, Kissmetrics, Google Analytics, whatever tool you use. They're always going to give you this. Remember, if you just use them by themselves, they can be vanity metrics like number of visits, number of page views, but they're good. Then you have to distribute to segment, as I mentioned here, just to find the real gem that actually allows it to be actionable on the metrics. There's another one, which is the bounce rate or ratio razón de rebote. That's another one of the typically useful ones. Bounce rate is defined by Avinash Kaushik, one of the creators of Google Analytics, by the number of the percentage of people who go to your website, take a look, puke, and leave. Okay, so basically, your website sucks for that user. It can be due to two main reasons. The first reason is because your marketing campaign is not working well. You sell apples, I want pears. I got there, I see that you sell apples, but your marketing campaign said that you were selling pears. So once I find that you sell apples, I leave. That's one thing. When you realize of that, you have to change your marketing approach. The other reason, the main reason, may be that I want pears, you sell pears, but when I get to your website, I would never buy pears from your website because it sucks, from a design perspective, or because of a claim or logo or whatever perspective, it doesn't work. Okay, it's a more technical reason, but that's another thing that you have to take into account. Okay, and there in acquisition, of course, in the rest of the stages, but in acquisition is where the performance metrics are really critical. Okay, so if we live by what Google tells us to do, in order to get positioned, in order to get found, we need to make sure that Google is relatively happy with us. And there are many ways and many challenges when doing that. But just for you to know, there's a few metrics that you need to take into account, because Google is going to take that into account as well. It can be something as simple as the load time, but it can be something specific as, for example, the LCP, which is the largest contentful paint, which is basically the time it takes for a page to load the biggest asset on the page. Okay, it can be an image, it can be a JavaScript the code snippet that has to load. That's something that is really critical for Google to position you well. Okay, there are many other metrics, but basically largest contentful paint, or the CLS, the cumulative layout shift, or the speed index are some of the most important ones. So depending on where you are, in which R stage you are, you may want to take a look at this and use tools like Google Lighthouse, or like web speed test, to take a look at what these tools tell about your website. All right. Regarding the second stage, which is activation, what we're trying to find is how interesting your site is, so that people are willing to give away their email address or any other kind of personal information. Okay, I always mention that from the beginning, matching your R strategy with your product is key. But typically in acquisition stage, you can kind of do everything from the outside. You can create your landing pages with unbounds, for example. You don't need to touch your website or your product so much. Okay, when we get to activation and then to retention, etc., you need to work with your product team. Okay, or your if you are yourself, with your product side of the brain. Okay, because any single or many things that you may want to do to increase your activation is related to your to making changes in your product. And how do we make products in our changes? In our product to make sure that activation is increased, conversion rates are increased from visits to registrations. One of the typical ways that we do is, okay, so we have version A of our website. This is the one that is currently visible in our domain. And now our designer comes and says, hey, you know what? I think we should change the sign up form. Okay, and we should change, I don't know, the title. Instead of try for free, you want to say sign up now. You want to change the color, or you want to put a picture of of a person here because you read in an academic paper that putting people's faces attract more conversion or something like that. But you're not really sure. Should you do that? What happens if you do that and then conversion goes down instead of going up? Well, if you have enough volume, if enough number of visits, you can actually create an A/B test. An A/B test is basically is what in statistics is called a randomized control trial. So the basic idea of this, because this is statistically very deep, and there are books, whole books just talking about this, but very simply talking, what we're saying here is that, okay, when people visit your website, you create a sample of users that are going to be your control group, and they're going to be seeing the same version that you have right now as a main version of your page or your whatever, okay, the homepage, for example. And then you're going to have B or C or D groups that when they visit your page are going to see a different version of your page. Okay, you're going to set up a goal. Okay, I want to measure how many conversions I get with version A, version B, version C, version D of my page. And after some time, I want to know who the winner is and then what the winner is. And then with that, I'm going to be able to select which page is going to be the main one, and I'm going to discard the rest. Okay, when you have enough volume, that works, and that works like a charm. And there are great tools right now. It can be something as simple as Google Optimize. From Google, it can be Optimizely, it can be other tools in the market that allow you to measure that automatically. They perform the statistical test automatically, so the results are statistically sound. And with that, you can actually see if version A is better than version B better than version C, or that there's not enough difference between the 2 or the 3 pages so that it doesn't make any sense to change the page, or whatever it is, okay? Sorry. My only advice here is, in order for this to be statistically relevant, you need a minimum amount of visits. Okay, it depends on the test you want to do. There are some calculators. If you can check, A/B test calculators on Google, and you can find a few of them from Optimizely, from Web Visual Optimizer, other tools like that offer their calculators. And be very careful with that, because if you don't get the statistical significance, what this means is that you are not going to know if the results you are getting are actually true results or actually come from random. Okay, because just because a few people choose page B doesn't mean that actually page B is better than page A. So take that into account. With this being said, now I take my math cap out, and I put my entrepreneur cap again. Sometimes you don't have enough samples, so you are going to do an A/B test and are going to take a qualitative decision based on what the A/B test tells you. Okay, and that's fine, and this is life, and this is what it is. Or sometimes you are not going to be able to wait for 15 days to get the final results, so you need to make a decision now, and after 3, 4, 5 days, you have to make a decision. That's fine, that's life. Don't worry about that, but always take into account that from a mathematical point of view, that's not going to be relevant. Okay, so you better take that into account. Okay, and then just to finish with the activation part and going to retention, one of the most important things that I can tell you in this talk, I would say that this is the most important thing that I can tell you in this talk. If you don't know about cohort analysis, this is the most critical part that I'll mention here. The rest of the things is fine, but this is, for me at least, it was a big change in the way I worked with numbers. So imagine that we are launching a product in January. We launched, a product in last January, and we have data about active users from January to November. Okay, active users for me, my definition is the number of people who registered and or logged in during that month. Okay, something as simple as that. So I see my results, and I see 1,059 people were active in January. That was my first ever month of the service. 1720 in February, 2275, 25, 26, 31, blah, blah, blah. 6,000, more than 6,000 people, active users in November. So if I only take a look at this data, wow, I'm so good, man. I just almost no resources, and I'm able to multiply by 6 the number of active users that I had here. Of course, if I'm telling you this, that this is not the actual truth. How do I find the real truth behind this? By building a cohort analysis. Okay, a cohort analysis is basically taking my whole number of users, okay, um, and then segmenting the number of users by some dimension. Okay, in this case, hey, Kate, thank you. Bye. In this case, for example, I'm gonna segment the users by registration month. Okay, by the month where users registered. So I'm gonna have different cohorts. A cohort in January, people who registered in January, the people who registered in February, the people who registered in March, and I'm gonna see their behavior, specific behavior cohort by cohort. Okay. So what I see in January, of course, I only have a cohort because that's the first cohort ever. And I see that, of course, yeah, I had 1,059 new users. They count as active users. What happened in February? I lost half. Then I lost other half, other half, other half, other half. So at the end of November, out of the 1,059 users that I was able to acquire, I only have two people, probably my mother and my father. That's probably what it is. When I go to the February cohort, I see that I got 1,200 users, sorry. Plus the 520, that's 1,720, and that's perfect. That's the number I had here. So what I start to see here is that what I was doing well was acquisition and activation. I was able to do that. You see that number is getting better, more or less. Okay. What I was doing like crap at the beginning was retention. Okay. People were being inactive just after 1 month. And in a subscription service or a registration service or something like that, having a down, a 50% of down after the first month is more or less normal. Okay, people just check your service, and most of them just want to browse and browse around, and they leave. But after the second month is when problems starts to arise. Okay, so the good thing about the cohort analysis is that I'm able to take a look at this. Very visually. I mean, I like numbers, so I take a look at this. But you can do things like this, for example, so that just with colors you're able to see which are the months and the cohorts that are doing well or bad. Okay, so of course what I see here is that something is going terribly wrong at the beginning, and it seems I've been able to start doing things much better in the latest months. Okay, so for example, in this case, yeah, I'm going down, but the percentage that I've lost, the percentage of decrease, is not high. So for me, that's good. Losing users is always going to be normal in a cohort. Okay, even if there's just one single reason, people die. Okay, so if people die, they are not your users anymore. Well, sometimes they will continue being your users for a while, but normally they're not going to be users anymore. So hopefully they're not going to be active users anymore. So you have to take it into account. The beauty of cohort analysis is that you can put here and here whatever you want. So you can say, okay, I want to segment by registration month, by payment, first payment month. I can put here that I have different versions of my tool, of my service. So I want to put here the users that are using version 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, and just check how their behavior changes when you're adding or updating your product. Okay, here you can have active users, you can have money spent, you can have, in our case, in 24 Symbols, number of books read per month and cohort. So you can do whatever you want. Okay, at the highest moment of my use of the cohort analysis, I had like 40. Okay, 40 cohort analysis that I checked every single week. Okay, now I'm not in that moment anymore, but they were so useful to me that I created so many of them because they allowed me to be really, really actionable. Okay, and if you do it every week, you don't have to take a look at the whole analysis. You only have to take a look at this part, and you're done. I mean, you know exactly what to do. Okay. In activation, things that work well for us. So we decided to move from if you want to see what's behind 24 Symbols, you have to register, which is great when you want to increase the number of registered users, increase your activation number. But it's not so good when you want to increase your retention number. Okay, the number of people who are actually active and using your website. So there was a moment in time when we decided that we didn't want to do this to force people to create an account just to see what's behind, which was something like this at that moment, a list of books where they could open the books and things like this. And then we moved from something as static as this to something like this, okay? We basically copied Pinterest in terms of the graphic design, but then we enable people to actually browse all the books that we had, up to a point, of course, but all the books that we had without having an account, okay? So you could click here, see the comments from users, see the cover, see all the things from the book. And then, yeah, if you wanted to open the book, you needed to create an account, okay? But at least we were delaying that decision as much as we could, okay? And that worked extremely well, okay? This is the average time, average visit duration for the homepage alone. And we went from 1.1 minutes and a half to around 5 minutes, okay? Just by doing that, okay? In this case, we didn't use A/B test, okay? Why? Because doing so many changes, you see this page, what if this page hadn't worked? What went bad? We wouldn't know. It was absolutely impossible. And we didn't have time to make changes one at a time. So basically it was a full revamp of the design. And we said, okay, let's go. And hopefully it will work. In our case, it worked. If it hadn't worked, we would have gone back to the previous version, of course. Right? What metrics do we have in activation? So we have the number of sign-ins, but that's a vanity metric, okay? Because the number of registrations almost never go down. People don't unregister, don't cancel a registration when the registration is free. Okay, this is more or less changing little by little because of the data privacy issues and things like that. But still, if a service has 1 million users, is not going to have 500,000 users in 2 months. I mean, that's not going to happen. So what we are looking for as a main metric in this phase is the number of active users. Okay, and what's an active user? You define it. Okay, that's just your responsibility on your product. It can be, of course, something as simple as someone who registered or logged in. That's the baseline definition of an active user. But then we can go as deep as you want. For example, in social networks, you can find something like this. An active user definition is someone who watches your content. More relevant, I would say, active user is someone who watches and shares content around, who writes comments on your content, produces content and uploads them to your system, or even curates content, like people who creates playlists in Spotify or in YouTube and shares them around. Okay, I wouldn't start by creating this pyramid at the beginning when I have, 1,000 users. It doesn't make any sense. But I would always take into account that this is something I may need in the future in order to create a more relevant definition of or analysis of my metrics. Okay, just let's go to retention. Okay, in retention, as we mentioned, we want to, as we say here, make people come back. Okay, so most of the products that we build right now are vitamins. Okay, most of the products that you have right now are actually vitamins. They are not critical for anyone right now. Okay, a drug is something critical. If I don't take my drug, probably I will die. Okay, I go to the store and I go to the doctor and I get the recipe, and then I go the receipt, sorry, and then I go to get my drug. But most of the times it's very difficult to get a product that is actually needed. Okay, so typically what you're going to try to do is to form a habit. Okay, to make your product become a drug from being a vitamin. Okay, so how do you do that? But before that, why do you do that? Okay, first of all, because if you are able to form a habit, if you are able to make your product being used constantly, and we'll define what constantly is in a second, that increases the customer lifetime. So, for example, in my case, okay, I am an avid user of Starbucks, customer, I would say. Okay, I got used to drinking chai latte. So if you go to almost any Starbucks in Madrid and ask for Justo, they will say, "Hey, yeah, that's the the guy who drinks soha chai latte with no water and double chai." So that's I do it not every day, but many days a week. Okay, it's very difficult for me to change from a Starbucks to other place unless they close down. Okay, because for me that's an habit. That's a habit. I go there and I don't think about going anywhere else. And it's actually more effective defense. Okay, when Tim Hortons opened in Madrid, the Canadian store, the coffee store. Um, for me, I mean, I went to Tim Hortons sometimes, but you know, the difference was so clear. I mean, I preferred Starbucks. They had to make the greatest chai latte in the world with the greatest price in the world for me to change. Okay, and even the experience. So if you are able to create a minimum amount of users to form habits, that's going to work. That happens every time there's a problem with WhatsApp. Okay, yeah, everyone talks about Signal, everyone talks about many other messaging systems, but the truth is that right now most people in Spain and in the world, they use WhatsApp. So unless they just do something horrible, and they may be able to do it, of course, we are going to continue using WhatsApp because it's always there, already there. Okay. There's what I'm going to be talking now in the following minutes. There's a fine line between creating a habit for a product or creating an addictive product. Okay. We don't have time to talk about that, but please bear that in mind. Okay. Whatever you do when trying to form a habit, you can create an addiction to people. And you, as owners of your companies, entrepreneurs, product managers, you should understand what you're doing. Okay, there's no, maybe 15 years ago you could say, "Oh man, I didn't know." Now there's no excuse. You know what may happen if you do things on your product to form habits. Okay. This being said, I'm positive. I'm optimistic on this. If you do it well, you can actually create a lot of value for your user or your customer. So how do you create this? You create this by using cognitive psychology. Okay, by understanding that people are not rational, that we all are irrational, that all the economic models are based on what is called the econ, a type of person who thinks rationally. That person doesn't exist. Okay, well, I may think of some people who are actually like that, but not many people. And the thing is that we are not rational. Let me put a very simple example. Probably many of you already know this one, but this is the decoy price. Imagine that you are going to have a dinner with your friends on Friday, and you're going to buy a bottle of wine. You go to the wine store and you see these two bottles of wines, one next to each other, and one is 10 euro and the other is 30 euro. Your mind is rational and you say, hey, no, I mean, this is stupid. I mean, there are similar kinds of wine. I'm going to get the 10 euro wine. I mean, the 31 is so expensive, the 30 euro one. The truth is that you're not going to find that in wine stores. What you're going to find in wine stores is that there are three types of bottles of wines. One is 10 euro, one is 30 euro, the other is 50 euro. And your rational mind is going to say, the right one, the 50 euro one, is so expensive. So the one on the left is so cheap. So I'm going to get the one in the middle. Okay. I'm so smart. These guys wanted to cheat me. I'm so smart here. I got you. No, they got you. Okay. Because actually, there are experiments that show that even if I now change the prices to 20, 40, and 60 euro, you are still going to choose the 40 euro, the one in the middle, and it's still going to change that as a fair price. Okay. So we are not rational. We are totally rational. And we need to understand that to create a product that actually helps people choose the best decision for themselves, not for you to make more money. But that's another thing. I'm going to much detail on this. I fully recommend you to read this book if you haven't read it yet. It's called Hooked. It's also in Spanish if you want it. It's called Hooked Enganchados by Nir Eyal. For me, it's the best book in 2014. And I really recommend you to do it. Basically, what they do is what the author does is to summarize all the academic information about how we think and how we make decisions, and put it into a framework to build digital products. Okay, where basically we do four things, and I will go very fast. But again, I recommend you this book for sure. In order to form habits, you need to understand that your UX must be simple enough for people to understand how they use it from the start. No magic here. You need to have a good UX. The action must be related to a reward. Okay, so it must be totally clear. that the user, when it sees your app, your service for the first time, it says, okay, so I guess that if I do this, I will get this reply. So for example, if I want to if I use Instagram, I have to understand that clicking here is going to allow me to take a picture and then share it on the social networks. It has to be absolutely clear. If not, that's not going to work. The third step is that that reward has to be variable. Okay, this is from a psychological perspective. This is critical because of how our dopamine system works. Uh, our dopamine system gets up. We get a shot. When we're waiting for a reward. Okay, if I have a date with this girl or this boy during the weekend, my dopamine system is going to be high during the week. Okay, then while I'm on the date, it's going to be high, but it's not going to be as high as before because the dopamine system works on the expectation of the reward. Okay, but more important, if the reward is not sure, if I'm not sure if I'm going to get the reward, the dopamine system gets higher and higher. Okay, so if I don't know if I'm going to get 1 or 100 likes on Facebook, if I don't know if my picture is going to be seen by 2 or 200 people, if I don't know if my date is going to come or not, if I don't know if I'm gonna get the ticket for the movie that I want to watch this weekend, then my dopamine system is going to be launching shots of dopamine to the whole brain. Okay, and this is how the habit formation works, because when I get the reward, when I check my email and I get the email from my boss, okay, my brain doesn't care about that. My brain says, hey, no, the great thing was that I got the dopamine before. So even if I know that I got the mail from the boss and then I take the mobile phone back to my pocket, my brain is going to order me to check the email again, because this is what I want to know. Will there be another email? Will there be another email? Will there be another email? This is how our brain works. If we understand this, this is how we start creating habit formation. And then at the end, we push the user to make an investment. Okay, you go to the gym today, you go to the gym tomorrow, you go to the gym during the weekend, and after 10 days, if you feel lazy one morning, you're going to go to the gym, because you're going to say, hey, no, I've been going for 10, 11 days in a row. I'm going to go for the 12th one for sure. Okay, if I fail the first day, the second day, the third day, I'm not going to go to the gym anymore, because that doesn't make any sense. Okay, right? How do we go down from the muses to a theater, as it says? There are many things that you can do to retain people. Okay, weekly digest of service activity, just newsletters, push notifications, onboarding emails, tell about the product or content, the good things that you're doing in your product. Be very careful with this one. You may think that what you're doing is great. Typically, your users may think that they don't care. Okay, always think of the user's value, not on the great thing that you just built. Okay, loyalty programs, emails for inactive users, anything that you can think of in order to continue the communication. That's what we're trying to find here. Things that you can do, things like, in 24 symbols, for example, we created posters like this to increase both acquisition and activation and retention. So even people that used us at the beginning when we didn't have good books saw this and then came back to us. Okay, we use humor here, like the 24 sutra, 24 posters to read on a tablet. The good thing here is to make things that allow users to come back. Okay, and these are the main metrics. Okay, the main one is called stickiness, or adherencia in Spanish. Is basically the number of daily active users divided by the number of monthly active users. So it tells you more or less how many of your monthly users come every day to your website and use your website or your app or whatever. In some cases, daily is not good enough, because you may have a service that is not used every day. So you may change to weekly, or you may change the numerator and denominator as you wish. The important thing is to create a relationship between a bigger amount of time and a shorter amount of time to see what's the recurrence, okay, of your users in your service. If you do really good, you will get to 70-75% that WhatsApp, Messenger from Facebook, or Instagram have, okay. But if you get that, you're a god, okay. You're gonna be fine. Then you have to work the retention curves, okay. This is what we were mentioning before with the cohort analysis. It is you need to measure how your users behave cohort by cohort, okay. So a good retention should be like this. This is a very good retention. Your users go down at the beginning, normal, okay. Some people don't care. I mean, they just registered or even paid for a month just to check it out, okay, but then they leave. This is going to happen for a while, for a few months, but then they stabilize, okay. And with a little bit going down every month or every quarter or whatever, but basically you're going to keep having retention there. That would be the perfect scenario. This is the bad scenario. You lose people and you continue losing people all the time until the end, okay. That's a bad scenario, but that's a normal scenario as well. So don't worry, don't frustrate. Just work on improving the blue line to red line when you're working with retention. Okay, and just to finish, I think we have 5 minutes. Referral, I won't go much into that because that takes a little bit more time and it's more advanced in the life cycle. So you may need sometimes to get there when working on your product. But basically, we're trying to get users in the most automatic way possible. So this started with Hotmail. Probably you know Hotmail. Hotmail started as a startup. They got investment. The investor, Tim Draper, said, "Hey, instead of wasting money on marketing, why don't you add P.S. I love you, get your email at hotmail.com for every email that is sent inside of the platform?" Okay, just test it out. Okay, it was a simple way of an attachment sent in every single email, automatically added to every single email that people sent on Hotmail at the beginning. What happened is that in 1.5 years, they were acquired by Microsoft. I don't know the number. I think it was like 40 million, 60 million. I don't really know. No, 400 million, sorry, dollars. But the most important thing is that in only 1.5 years, they were able to have more than 10% of the current World Wide Web base at that moment. That was amazing. Okay. And now that can be dwarfed by what Facebook and WhatsApp and the data have done later on. But that was the first time that people understood that you could actually create an incredible growth out of internet. That internet was not yet another channel; it was something else. Craigslist. I'll leave you that as an exercise to check what Craigslist was, what Airbnb was doing with Craigslist. Just Google Airbnb and Craigslist, and you will see how fun they were able to do things and to cheat Craigslist to get even more users. But there are more. I mean, there's a great book called Hacking Growth by Sean Ellis, which is kind of the inventor or the creator of the concept growth hacking. So the book is called Hacking Growth, that explains many things about how he builds growth hacking approaches, because this is basically what it does, what we do in referral stage. I would spend some time talking about virality, but unfortunately, by now we all know what the K factor is, because the virality factor in computers, in business, in internet business, is basically the same as it comes from the biology part. So basically, the K factor is the amplification rate times conversion rate. So if I ask you to tell your friends to register to one service, and if you tell to 10 of your friends, that's a 10x amplification rate. But if out of each of your 10 friends, only one of them actually registers, that's a 0.1 conversion rate. So I'm gonna get very normal growth. If all of your friends register and convert, that's gonna be a 100% conversion rate, and then I'm gonna start growing like crazy. Okay. When I say growing like crazy, is like crazy. So the K factor is vital by default. So if you are able to get a number like a 2 K factor of 2, you're gonna start growing like crazy. If you are able to keep that K factor during different iterations. So I ask you to register and to talk to your friends. You talk to your friends, they register, they talk to your friends, their friends registered, they took to their friends and friends and friends. This is the difficult thing, and this is almost, I would say, impossible, but extremely difficult to achieve. If you're able to achieve it for a few generations, that's when you get the exponential growth and you become Dropbox or you become WhatsApp. Okay. In the meantime, 1.1 is much better than 1. So if you do referral, try to grow little by little and see how it goes. And just to finish, and this is going to be really short because Kate just started to explain it much better than me. When we're talking about making money, first, as I said at the beginning, know your fucking P&L, please understand it, and know your cash flow. Probably as a start, you need to focus on your cash flow first, but please don't forget about the basics. This is so critical. And then you go to different metrics depending on the business model that you use. Here, I'm going to use the subscription model metrics. Then you have the marketplace metrics. I already also have a small slide deck. So if you want to just let me or Sergio know, and I can share it with you with the main marketplace metrics. But basically, I'm going to go fast because Kate already mentioned this. First thing is try to minimize the churn rate. Churn is the number of people who actually stop paying you month after month. So this is what you want. You want to minimize the number of people who churn, okay? And you want to increase the conversion rate. So this is basically what you want to do when you have a subscription service or something similar to a subscription service. As simple and as difficult as this. It is so difficult that many companies are using artificial intelligence, they're using deep learning to try to predict churn. People as relatively small as Moz, probably some of you know Moz. Moz is an SEO, SEM company. They provide tools for acquisition, SEO, SEM. They're using deep learning. Orange, Vodafone, all those big telcos, they're using deep learning to try to predict churn, to try to predict when someone is going to cancel their telco account. Okay, so because just saving a few percentage, a small percentage of churn can mean thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars saved and added to the P&L. MRR, I don't know if Kate mentioned this. Sorry, I was not in that part of the talk yet. But basically, in case she didn't mention, this is the number of people who actually pay in a recursive way, recurring way. Sorry, month after month. So the people who pay €9 a month for the Spotify account, plus the people who, for example, Netflix go from €7 account to the €12 account. That's an upsell. And then we put the people who actually stop paying, the churn, here in the lower side. Okay, this gives us a very visual way to understanding how our business model is going. If you have a huge growth in blue and also a huge growth in red, that means that you're very good in acquisition and very bad in retention. And EVC can see that in a second. If you have a relatively low blue line, but a really, really good red line here, that means that you may not be good in acquisition. Maybe you don't have enough money, but it seems that your product is really good, okay? Because people who use it. So as a VC, I may be interested in checking it out, okay? So you have to take that into account when using those metrics. LTV, Kate mentioned it. CAC, absolutely critical. You need to take that into account. LTV greater than 3x CAC. Kate already also mentioned that. Let me just emphasize it. Okay, this is a VC need. Okay, you can have a great business just by having an LTV greater than CAC. But if you are a startup and want to scale, that's not going to be enough. Okay, it's your decision to decide whether you want to be a startup, scale up, or you want to be a boutique company that just makes good money. So that's up to you. And just to finish, and just a few minutes late, so sorry, Sergio, for that. Just some conclusions. First, measure from day one, anywhere, anytime. Just try to measure. Have someone taking care of your metrics. Okay, you need a PhD in statistics to do that. Just someone who has a few hours a week and who is not afraid of numbers. Okay. Only monitor what you truly care about. You measure everything. You monitor only what basically the R stage is telling you. If you are in retention stage, focus on retention stage. take a look at other metrics in the other stages just in case, but focus on that. So at the beginning of the day, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 metrics that you're going to base your decision making throughout the day, instead of having thousands of metrics in a huge dashboard that nobody understands. Embrace imperfection. Kate mentioned the attribution issue, and this is one of the problems that we have in digital metrics. You're never going to get perfect numbers. You're never going to get the perfect truth. Embrace it. That's how life works. Okay. And just to finish, beware vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are like this picture, beautiful picture from Vanity Fair. The designer Tom Ford, Keira Knightley, Johansson, beautiful people. But if you scratch the surface a little bit, this is what we are. Okay, this is what we actually are. We have fat. We need eyeglasses. I mean, we're not that great. Use vanity metrics when needed, but understand who we really are. Okay, and if you do that, I think you're gonna do well, and you will increase little by little your product to be something you can be proud of. So, thanks so much for your time. This is my email address and exactly like Kate, just put the same Twitter handle. Any question, anything, I'm open to that. So thanks so much.
Okay, is there any question? The YouTube chat is a bit slow, so that's why I always ask you to send some questions during the chat, during the speak.
It's free.
Thanks. Come on, Samuel, teams, participants, viewers, is there any question? That's a good opportunity to ask questions now. Better than just sending an email.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be shy.
Okay, if there are no questions, we will finish, and you will have Justo email and Justo contact during the program, and also after the program, Justo is part of the community, so yeah, you will have the opportunity to chat with him. And yeah, thank you very much for the session, Justo. It's always a pleasure to listen to you talk about metrics. That's really, thank you for the session.
Thank you.
Okay, there is a question here from Carlota. She's from Lázaro.
Yeah, sorry. I think I know you, right? I think you were in a program. I think I know you. Yeah. Hello, Carlota. How are you? From which moment can we begin to measure data? Is there any tool before I appears in data? I mean, this is obvious, but yeah, start measuring the data from the start. Now, the basic tools are Google Analytics, Google Search Console. I would say those are the two first ones that you need to take into account. I don't work for Google, so but it's true that this is critical. Yeah, that's right. The Impact Master. That's right. Thanks a lot. But I would start with that. Once you have that, you can go to other tools. If you are interested in, for example, heat mapping, you can go to Hotjar, for example, so you can know how people move in your website. If you go into retention, there's a great tool that is Amplitude, for example, that is really, really, really good. There are many other tools, but I would say to start, Excel, Google Analytics, Google Search Console to know how your website, or typically your website or your mobile app, is being understood by Google, and they start from there. And then you hire the PhD in data.
Okay, any other question? It's open. I mean, you don't need to be a participant of the program just to ask questions. So yeah, just to feel sure, you can always ask or contact us. Okay, so no more questions, I see. So yeah, thank you very much, Justo. Always a pleasure, and thank you also to the people who share this third session of the program with us, participants, teams, speakers, friends, and everyone here today. Now we will move to a private room, as we always say. We're going to practice the pitch and feedback with the teams. And now there is another question. Okay, the last one. Be fast.
If I have issues understanding business metrics, any talents or place I can start with? Well, in the Tetuan Valley community, for sure. I think there's lots of people who actually know much more than me about specifics of metrics. My recommendation, and sorry, it's not an advertisement, but if you search for Amplitude Playbook in Google, they have published 3 really good books on metrics. One of North Star, another one on engagement, another one in retention. These are really, really good books to start with. And of course, I had to do self-advertisement. I wrote a book last year about metrics, so that can be another option for you.
And another question from Jack. They're also
Well,
teams.
yeah, that may take a little bit more time.
Yeah.
We can share some slide deck for that. For example, one of the most important metrics for marketplace is the Wells curve, the curva de la ballena, that measures the impact that the specific percentages of your users have on your business line. So that could be the most important one. But there are some others. So yeah, that would take another 15 minutes of time. So you can, if you look for marketplace metrics, you will find some good. And if not, there's some slide text that we can share.
Yeah, great. Okay, so thank you very much. Now we will move to the private room, Google Meet room. You already have the link, and there will have the pitch and feedback session. So yes, participants just move there, and I will arrive in a minute. And for the rest of the people, the viewers, our friends today, just see you next week. And Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we will talk about product development and UX, the fourth session of the Tetuan Valley Startup School 21st edition. So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Telso. See you.
Thank you. Bye.